Hey there, Robert John Hadfield here in Utah South Studios, and we've got to talk about John 5 with Motley Crue. But before we get into it, remember audiomover.com. Audio Mover is the company that takes your old audio and videotapes and converts them to digital. And if you have old audio or videotapes, and you know you do, go to audiomover.com and get an order started there. Anyway, like a lot of you, I watched some of the footage that was put out with John 5 playing with Motley Crue. And I got to tell you, I've got mixed emotions about this whole thing because I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm a big Motley Crue fan, and I have been for basically since Too Fast for Love. And if you're like me, you remember, it's one of those bands where you remember where you were the first time you heard Livewire. There was something about that guitar sound, the tone that Mick Mars had. It didn't sound like a guitar. It sounded like a motor. It sounded like just power. It was incredible what he was doing with that sound in that song, specifically Livewire. And it was one of those things that just like changed me when I heard it. Like I said, I remember where I was. I was in my neighbor's backyard. Me and some guys were playing football, throwing a Nerf football around. Somebody had a boom box, and they throw Livewire on, and it's like boom, and you hear this sound and you hear this song, and you're just blown away by this incredible thing. So, and I was 11 at the time when I first heard that, and anyway, it made a huge impression on me. So over the years, then Shout at the Devil came out. Of course, I'm instantly interested in it, and Mick Mars was this incredible presence. I don't know if you remember the inside of Shout at the Devil where he had the 4 pictures of the guys. I brought the record in here. I grabbed it out of the collection so I could hold it up as a visual. So here's my copy of Shout at the Devil. Promise you I'll make another video where we actually look at the record up close. But this picture here, Mick Mars. All these guys had flames behind them. But Mick Mars looked like the devil. It was so unbelievably cool. I remember when I saw that picture, it was almost spooky. And he just had this, to me at that time, even though I loved all the image of all those guys, Mick was the one that had this presence about him that was just over the top cool. And so he, with this guitar playing and then that ultra evil presence that he had, I was a fan of the guy. And I didn't appreciate, I was a guitar player too, and I did not at the time appreciate though how great he was, because Mick Mars Motley Crue was popular during the 80s when you started having all these guitar gods showing up. From Eddie Van Halen was already on the scene, but Randy Rhoads comes tearing onto the scene, and then just the laundry list. All the guys that went through Ozzy's band and Dio's band, and then you had George Lynch, and you had all these like amazing, and then of course the Steve Vai, and you know what I'm talking about. And then there's Mick Mars over here that just wasn't part of that somehow. And he never, I think he got outshined so much by the flash from all these other guitar players that he was kind of forgotten, at least as a talented guitar player. And I never even really thought of him that way until, honestly, it was just a few years ago. When The Dirt came out, I listened to the audiobook. I started reading up more on Nikki Sixx. I read his Heroin Diaries, and I started getting back and paying really close attention to Motley Crue again. And I started to, I actually heard somebody make some comment about how he was an underappreciated guitar player. And I thought, wait, really? Was he good? And I went back and I started listening to him, and he was amazing in one really, really particular way, that he didn't sound like anybody else. And that is not easy. You get into the 80s and you had all these guitar heroes that were all just, it was like they were all copying each other and then one-upping each other. A little bit like some of these singers that just, I can sing higher than you can. Well, yeah, I can sing higher than you. And it just kept getting more and more just kind of silly. And So it became like cartoonish, and it became almost a parody. The guitar players almost became a parody because it was just so much flash and so much speed and so much this and that. And then there's Mick Mars. And what he was doing was just unforgettable guitar playing. A little bit like, nothing like the sound, but a little bit like Angus Young in the sense that it was like, look, I just play rock and roll. And what I play sounds killer. And it's awesome, and it fits the music, and you're going to love it. And that's what it was. Because you think of all the guitar heroes that did, many of them that just did very extremely forgettable stuff. But you go back to Livewire, you can't forget that riff. I mean, when they play concerts today, I've seen them several times. I'm sure many of the people watching this have too. That riff starts, man. I mean, the place erupts. I mean, I get, me at that moment, I go, that's it. That's the thing. And it's just whatever that was, he had it. And so then it's amazing then thinking about him because he started off giving us that incredible riff from day one. And then what did he do like a decade later? Kickstart My Heart. This is of course, Nikki Sixx was the guy that was writing the vast majority of this music. But Mick Mars had this idea. He said, hey, I can do this thing with my whammy bar that sounds a little bit like a motorcycle. And, a lot of people that own whammy bars had done similar sounds before, but there he was. Like he put it on tape. They recorded it. And every single time, I remember, it's so crazy because I remember the first time I heard that song. I remember where I was. I was in Chicago. I was sitting on the back of a balcony and somebody was playing it in an apartment across from where I was. I didn't even know what was going on. And all of a sudden I hear, same thing. And these unforgettable things that Mick Mars created in that hard rock, heavy metal space. So, and then you find out about his, I can't even, I've heard the disease that he had. And, I don't think any of us knew that he had this ankylosing spondylitis. I don't even want to try to say it. I've heard it said a few times, but I can't. I'm reading it. I can't say it. But it was this bone disease and this degenerative disease. And I don't think any of us, until The Dirt came out, I didn't even know. I don't think it was until The Dirt. Maybe it was before then, because I actually remember Tommy Lee making a comment about they hadn't seen each other for a long time, and then he went over and saw him and how he'd kind of just degenerated so far. And it just made me sick, of course. And he was the oddball in the band too, because he wasn't the partier like the other guys was. He was the adult. And so to see him going through that, because if you saw him in concert or watched any of the footage, it was painful watching him, because it looked like he couldn't have weighed 80 pounds. He'd lost all this weight. He was just this scrawny, and, he'd be up there, but man, still, even though he wasn't doing, jumping around like Vince kind of always did and the others, his presence was so powerful. And the stage, it's hard to imagine that stage without him. So then, you realize all this stuff. You see the documentary, The Dirt. I don't know what rockumentary, whatever you call the thing. I know there's a term for it, and I can't think of it right now. Biopic, I think that's right. And you get a real sense of just what a mess that was in his life, that disease that he had. And then to watch him, on stage now, where he's just this shadow of what he was. And of course, Motley Crue wanted to keep going. There's this little piece of me that wishes they would have stayed retired because of the legend part of it. One of the things that makes Led Zeppelin legendary, I think, the fact that they didn't try to get back together and go on tour and do more. They did a couple little things, but the fact that they just kind of disappeared helped the legend. And when Motley Crue, we're breaking up and it's going to be the end, and then they just said, actually, not really. That bothered me a bit, I got to admit. And then now that they're back on tour and they're with Def Leppard and then talk about a band that's had turnover, Def Leppard. But here's the thing. So, when Motley Crue tried this before with John Corabi back in the 90s, Hooligan's Holiday, what was it? I think it was just the album didn't have a name, right? They just had the song Hooligan's Holiday, and I think the album was just called Motley Crue. But I got to tell you something. That Corabi's voice is crazy good, and I actually liked listening to it just because he was such a great singer. I mean, it was powerful, powerful music. And I didn't hate the album, but I didn't love it. And it wasn't because it wasn't Vince Neil. It was because I just didn't like the songs very much. I thought they were but the execution was spectacular, and I loved Corabi's voice. So I'm not necessarily opposed to people changing members out, but when it loses something, it loses something. But they've hit legend status, but once again, this is the second time they've replaced somebody. Sort of. I mean, anyway, this is the second really significant time that they've done this. But I don't know that they're going to record with John 5, but they're obviously touring with him. And so I watched this footage, and I didn't hate it. I didn't like the idea when I first heard it. I thought, oh goodness, are you serious? Are we going to do this? I just don't want to see Motley Crue. Because Motley Crue had set themselves up as a little bit like Kiss did, and the Beatles, and Led Zeppelin, where it was really these four guys. And it's hard when you set your band up that way to start replacing people. And they were one of them, and that was probably part of the reason that so many people had trouble with Corabi, because no. Motley Crue is these four guys. There's other bands like U2, for example. Sorry, it's not a metal band for those of you that are metal, but I actually love U2. But you can't imagine that band with another member. It just wouldn't work. It wouldn't be right. I actually would be way less interested in them instantly if they changed out one of the members. It doesn't matter how untalented one of the members may or may not be. That's not the issue. It's the cohesive thing. And when you set your band up like that from the beginning, it makes it really tough to start making just changes like this, especially when you've had, what have they been around now? 40 years? So if you're going to do that, you need to be a band like The Cure, where it's Robert Smith and a bunch of other people. And so that guy, The Cure, can be kind of whoever it is as long as Robert Smith's in there. But Motley Crue's not that kind of a band. They are these four guys, this gang that's these four guys. So anyway, getting back to this, I watched this thing with John 5, and I didn't hate it for one really specific reason. Because John 5 was smiling the entire time. And you know what that said to me? It said, I love this music, and I'm just glad I'm here to be a part of it. If he would have gotten up on that stage and started, trying to be this tough rock star to fit in with Motley Crue, I don't think I would have liked it. Sorry, it's just the way these things are. Entertainment and bands are a lot of just image. And the fact that he got up there and he had that Van Halen look, when you ever saw Eddie Van Halen and Alex playing and the guys in that, Eddie Van Halen just had this huge grin on his face all the time. Like, you know what? I'm having the time of my life right now. I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. He had that look on his face. And John 5 is on that stage, and he's not in Motley Crue. He's not Motley Crue, and he knows it. And he's got this huge smile on his face, like, you know what? I'm here to pay homage to some great music and help some great music come to life. And this amazing guitar player, for a brief moment tonight on this stage, I get to help execute that sound, and I'm just happy to be here to do it. And you get that impression watching him. Of course, John 5, I've seen that guy in interviews. I've seen him around for, he's been around for a long time at this point. He's like a year younger than me, and I'm an old guy. And he just looked so appreciative of being in this moment and being a part of it. And that it was that smile on his face that just sold me. And I look at that, and then, of course, I'm listening to him playing. He's awesome. John 5's a great player. Just no doubt about it. And he can execute whatever you need him to play, he'll get it right and he'll nail it. But he didn't, but he got up there and he, like I said, you watch that thing and he just was just like, hey man, I love Motley Crue. And he, so he's a year younger than me. He would have been a fan like a lot of us were. He was a kid. And in any of us, you get up on that stage and you're like, no, I'm not part of Motley Crue. I'm here as a fan to help bring this music to life. So there was something special about that. It made it work. And so weirdly, where I usually struggle watching new members come in with bands like that, like Kiss, I got to be honest, I'm a Kiss fan, not afraid to admit it. I get a lot of, you go watch our TikTok channel and watch some of our Kiss videos and Kiss sucks. Whatever, I get it. I like them. They got a lot of catchy music. I loved them as a kid, so I still dig this stuff. But Tommy Thayer, Eric Singer, dressing them up like I mean, imagine if Motley Crue would have tried to do that with John 5. Okay, here's what you're going to do, John. You're going to have this long black hair, and you're going to play this beat-up Fender Strat, and we're going to dress you in this all black. Nah. John 5's like, he comes in there, look, I'm John 5. I'm not Motley Crue. I'm in here to play with this band and make some cool music, some stuff that I love. But you imagine if they'd have tried to do that, we'd have rejected it. I would have instantly. Can't watch this. Nobody's going to dress up like Mick Mars. Mick Mars is Mick Mars, and there's only one. And so that was one of the things that makes a lot of us kind of reject that stuff with Kiss, because look, I love Tommy Thayer. I was into Tommy Thayer before being into Tommy Thayer was cool. I was a big fan of Black and Blue back in the 80s, all the way back to Hold On to 18. I was into that band, and Tommy Thayer was the guy. I loved Tommy Thayer, so I got nothing against that dude. I mean, he's doing a job. But watching him and Eric Singer, same thing. I just go, whatever, man. I can't do it. And it's similar here. If you can imagine them doing the same thing with Mick Mars, we would have all hated it. But he walks up on that stage, man. I see that huge smile on his face. I turned it on. The first thing I watched when I saw it on YouTube was popped to the version of Livewire up that somebody had posted, and it just sounded killer. And he's got this huge grin on his face, and I'm just thinking, imagine myself like, dude, I'd be smiling from ear to ear too. And he's got to be just loving it, and watching him loving it makes it just awesome. And so now the weak link in that band, we all know who the weak link in Motley Crue is right now, and I don't need to say it. But at this point, I don't want him gone either, because it's just it's the guys. So so John 5, God bless him. It weirdly, in a weird way, I'm kind of glad they're doing it, and I'm glad that they got him. That they're doing it the way they're doing it. They didn't pick some unknown guy that was going to pretend to be Mick Mars. They didn't pick. They picked a guy that we all know already. We know that he's a sweetheart guy, that he's super nice, that he's a Motley Crue fan, and he's worked with these guys before, and he's going to come in there and he just knows what his job is. You know what? I'm here to play some great music, to bring this music to life. Hopefully, help the show, be big. And help bring a Motley Crue show to life, and then all of us who are fans. So hopefully, I'm hoping I get to see them, that they'll come through. I live about an hour and a half outside of Vegas, so if they come to Vegas, that'll be the only chance I get to see them. I'm not a big concert guy either. I've said this in videos before. Concerts usually bore me. I'm bored in about the first 15 minutes. I've seen so many concerts in my life, and it's very rare that I don't want to leave after that amount of time. But I still would like to. I wouldn't mind seeing this, and seeing John 5 playing with Motley Crue. And I'm curious. I hope at this point, I kind of hope they don't go and try to record anything with him. That they basically just tour on the stuff that we all love. Although I could be wrong. You know, every once in a while bands put out stuff later in their career that's good, but I'm at this point, it's like, let the legacy ride as best you can. I know you're all hurting it a little bit by continuing on without Mick Mars and doing this, but still kind of, you know, you've made your mark in the studio. Let that ride. It'll stand some of it will stand the test of time for a while. Livewire, for heaven's sakes, that'll be I think people 100 years from now will hear that tune and go, wow, whatever was going on there, that was powerful. And all those guys, you could hear their grit and their soul coming through that music, man. It was so powerful. And, you know, Nikki Sixx, he's got other projects that I think is his songwriter. Just go do that other stuff. I got to be honest with you. I love 6 a.m. Genuinely love 6 a.m. I actually went and saw, they came through Denver, Colorado. This was, I don't know, 6 years ago. They were playing at I think it was the Ogden Theater in Denver. I loved it. And I love Nicky's writing. I think his music is spectacular. And it didn't sound anything like Motley Crue, and I loved it. Weirdly, I actually liked it a lot more than some of the Motley Crue stuff he's done in Crue. So, you know, each of these guys has other things they can go do. I even enjoyed Tommy Lee's like rap album that he put out. I can't remember what it's called way back when. But they have cool stuff. Let them do their thing, and I'm always going to be a Crue fan, whatever they do. It was ingrained into me when I was a kid, when I first heard Livewire. I think that's true for a lot of us. And so once again, I don't have anything. I think it's a good thing, and I'm glad to see John 5 doing it. I think they picked the right guy for this kind of thing. And, you know, good luck to all the stuff they do. And I'd love to hear your feedback too. You know, what you think of all this stuff, replacing band members and when it works and when it doesn't work. Because there are examples where replacing band members in the past has made all the difference, even after they were popular. So anyway, I'd love to hear your feedback. Go ahead, leave some comments if you don't mind. And like I said, remember audiomover.com. If you have old audio and videotapes, to convert them to digital, please like and subscribe to the channel. And with that, have a fantastic day.